substantial part of our audience is Gen Z. They don't understand what life was back in those days.
So it was not just me, but pretty much everybody in Bombay wanted to be in the stock market. So mid 1990s was a very rough time in the markets, given that there were lots of scams going on. I don't think they even need a job. I think that the people who are there in the real world, people that you said, they are learning from these financial influencers. I met a lot of entrepreneurs. I hear a lot of them say that I've seen poverty and I don't want to go back there. Imagine the advantage you have if you learn one language and you go there and you speak to the dealers. The kind of information, the kind of insights that you will get is something that no spreadsheet will give you. There's nothing called natural. I mean, it's like that saying, right? Everybody's an overnight success after like 10 years of practice.
Okay, so thanks, Tinkley. I'll just start by introducing our guest for today. It's always a pleasure, to have somebody who's defined or let's say redefined how podcasts happen on personal finance. I think it's defined, redefined. Of course, he's the one who's going to do it, at some stage. And today's guest, Mr. Anupam Gupta, it's a very interesting story in certain ways, very personal story as well, because, Anupam, you're also a chartered accountant. I'm also a chartered accountant, but of course, from very vastly different batches. And here we have, you did your CA, then you got into the stint of research. And after that, you've written books, you've done a podcast, and your Twitter, I think it's fabulous. You've got people all around. It just makes my job a very, I think, let's say, easier in one way, because you already know the drill of how these things work, and more difficult in one way is because you've already been asked so many questions. You've already gone through this whole journey. So I don't know what to ask you. I don't know how to go about it. I'll just try my best. And I'll tell Anupam, I think your victory project was superb. The Wisest Owl, great book. You brought out some of the best advisors in the country, and you've done a great job. When it comes to Asian Paints, this book, The Rise of Asian Paints, and the story of Champaklal Choksey. Now, what I'm interested in knowing is, we'll go part by part, right from, your days as a research analyst, and then we'll get into how you've started writing a book and, going into a lot more detail. So how different it is for you as a person, and what are the key learnings that, you've gotten along the way. So talk us through about your journey when you transitioned from, doing CA and getting into equity research. I'm very sure, back in those days, not a lot of CAs would be doing that. Like off lately, let's say in 2020, 21, everybody's not wanting to be in audit and taxation anymore. They're wanting to come into, financial services. But back in those days when you graduated, I think how was it in that time?
Thank you for having me, Jinay. Very kind of you, and thank you for the kind words. Thankfully, I have not been asked too many questions because I'm the one who's asking questions. Doing the podcast now in its eighth year and some 470 episodes. So thankfully, I don't have. I mean, for me, it's an easier job of sitting in the chair and asking people questions. If I were to be asked questions like we're doing in this session, then I would be extremely uncomfortable as I am now. So from CA to equity analyst, it's okay. I mean, it was the post-liberalization era. The liberalization happened in 91, and in the 90s, all the foreign brokerages started coming to India, and I was very lucky that I had to wait for some time, but then I finally got a break with CLSA, and that's it. So it wasn't really, I mean, there's no journey and there's no transition. You just waited out and you hope to start your career as a CA. And I've always been fascinated with the stock markets ever since I was in college and then doing CA. My office was opposite the Bombay Stock Exchange building, etc., etc. So I was never really interested in audit and taxation, although I really like the subjects as such. But for me, it was always going to be some way or the other to enter into stock markets. And I don't know if you remember, but this was the post Harshad Mehta era. So it was not just me, but pretty much everybody in Bombay wanted to be in the stock market. So it was quite a natural thing. And I was just lucky that I got a break because the mid 1990s were a very rough time in the markets, given that there were lots of scams going on throughout. I mean, the period after Harshad Mehta, probably people will not remember, but that entire 90s period before SEBI really started becoming strong and a lot of processes were streamlined, it was full of volatility and markets weren't performing in any case. So I was just lucky that I got a break at that point of time in 1999.
And how about the research process? I mean, how has it changed over time? Because if you're talking on 91, 92, I'm very sure, the data wouldn't be as readily available as it is today. So the reason I'm asking you is, Anupam, because substantial part of our audience is Gen Z. They don't understand what life was back in those days.
I hope that they don't need to understand also because that's all the past and half of India was born after 1995. So it's not just your population, but pretty much everybody in India is of that vintage. That's why they called it the demographic dividend because it's a very young crowd. See, honestly, I began my research career in 99. So by that point of time, a lot of reforms were already happening. And equity research is just in today's day and age, you just have to open your browser, just Google, and you learn everything beyond about equity research. There's nothing to it. There's absolutely nothing to it at all. There's just the analysis part and the writing part. That's just two things. I'm sure that your audience is smart enough to figure that out on their own. There are a lot of tools right now that help you to become an analyst on your own. Then, of course, there is a small part of getting a job. I think people don't even want jobs these days. They're very happy doing the analysis on their own, being investors on their own, and I think that's a much better place to be in.
Why would you say that? I mean, because don't you need to learn the ropes under somebody, before getting into it full-fledged?
I don't. You tell me. I mean, that's probably for your audience to know, right?
Right.
Because the kind of content creators that are there out there in personal finance, I don't think any of them has even worked in a job. I don't think they even need a job. I think that the people who are there in the real world, people that you said, they are learning from these financial influencers. So
Hmm.
these are all self-taught people who are obviously great at what they do, right? Because if you look at the popularity, they're reaching out to, I don't know, maybe crores of people each and every day. And they're helping to make people smart each and every day with great content out there. So I'm just looking at that very huge demographic and the fact that they are doing a good job in learning on their own and using that knowledge to give it absolutely and completely free of cost to everybody. So why would anybody want to do a job any which way? I mean, there is a small part of salary, but I guess that's for the audience to figure out themselves.
Of lately, salary and I think money is not a very big conversation when it comes to Gen Z, because I think these are the guys who've benefited. I mean, their elder generations have any which was benefited from this whole, India growth story, and they've made a lot of money. So they really don't need that much amount of things to start with. So I agree to that point. But sometimes, when you make a poker face, it's very difficult to understand whether you're actually, I mean, critical about it, or you're, saying the
No,
factual.
you just said it yourself, right? This
Correct.
generation doesn't need money, and that's a good thing.
Correct. Correct. Which is agreed. Agreed. And now, then you start writing. I mean, how does that happen? Or you just, I mean, of course, back in the day when we had, spoken on the Victory Project, and I think there was Saurabh who said, ki, just take ideation hua, and you guys started working on it. So, what was going through your head at that point in time?
Victory Project was entirely Saurav's book, and I'm kind of very honored and very lucky to have played a part in that. And I think it was great fun. That book also went on to become a national bestseller. I'm glad that people liked it. And Saurabh led that entire book. So it's a very simple framework. I mean, of course, it's meant for people who want to pursue a passion and who have a very clear driving desire and motivation to become something in life by doing what they like.
Hmm.
So I'm glad that the book did really well. I'm glad that people bought the book and hopefully learned from it because we spoke to some people who've actually lived that life. Whether it was Sanjeev Bikhchandani, whether it was Ramdev Agrawal, Sanjay Bakshi, there were so many interesting people that we spoke to who all embodied a certain, so to say, chapter of the book, right? So there was
Right.
simplicity, creativity, a lot of things in the book, a lot of great people in the book, a lot of lessons, and I hope that that also was useful for the readers.
No, of course, I think it really transformed. It changed my way of thinking. It changed my way of, learning. So it was really a great project. And then you
Sure.
go on to the Wisest Owl.
Yeah, the Wisest Owl was it was also in a way the next logical thing to do. I had originally planned to make it an interview of fund managers, but the feedback that I had got at that point of time was that what's the point of talking to fund managers when they only talk in terms of buy or sell? It's much better to take a holistic view of your personal finances, and for that uh, the advisors were the right people to speak to. Of course, at that point of time, I think the influencer phenomenon was just starting off. It was becoming big, but I think when I published the book and what happened later, I, the way that the influencer thing picked up was something that probably I didn't expect or underestimated. That's the right word. I had made a mention of it in the book. But yeah, the Wisest Owl was just a framework for people to manage their personal finance. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think Suresh's story or Suresh's take on it, I think it makes a lot of difference. At least
Yeah.
personally for me, I found Suresh to be very clear-headed when it came to, him communicating. So there's one question, that's come already from Aisha, and she's just curious to know what has inspired you to become an author.
There's no inspiration at all. I've since college I liked writing. There was just I and equity research gives you the opportunity to write, right?
Hmm.
That's the first thing. And the second thing is that even within equity research, I was never. That's one of the reasons why I eventually left the industry after spending almost 20 years out there. Was that I did not really find myself writing about buy this stock and sell that stock very easily. So Saurabh, in fact, gave me the very big opportunity of writing thematic research. So that's a more creative way of writing about investment opportunities in India. So there's not been any one single inspiration, but if I had to, then I think Saurabh would be the biggest inspiration. The way that he writes, the clarity that he has, and of course the passion and ambition that he brings to writing, that's always been an inspiration for me.
I think I'm very sure, Saurav will go down as somebody who's inspired an entire, a league and generation of people to get into equity research and become fund managers. It's so true. So true. So we'll come to the book of the day. The book that I've really liked reading, I've really enjoyed reading, is The Rise of Asian Paints. I think Saurav's written a lot about Asian Paints. So I'm very sure, there would have been a lot of thought in your head when it came to के already सौरभ ने इतना बोल दिया है, रक्षित ने भी इतना बोल दिया है. There's a lot in the public about Asian Paints. Now what more? And there you go, profiling. Of course, in the foreword of you say ki Saurabh is the one who again inspired you to write about CHC, Mr. Champaklal Choksey. Because you used the word CHC, it's just coming to my mind. And of course, Champak Bhai. So how was it? I mean, just going through. I mean, you're if I'll tell you what, I had recently I had even spoken to Mrs. Sonu Basin. So Sonu's done a book on
Boja.
Berger paints, right? And Dingras. And it's very easy now because Kuldeep Singh Dingra is right there in front of him, in front of her. She can go ask questions like what went into your head when you were doing this, or how you just went to Vijay Mallya and said कि चलो मेरे को आपका company चाहिए. But here you are, profiling one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our, of this country, and when he's not there. So how hard was it, and what went through your head? What was the preparation that you did?
So yeah, just to clarify, the process for this actually began in 2016 when Saurabh had written The Unusual Billionaires, and I was quite lucky to play a part in that. So there is an entire chapter on Asian Paints. That's I think where the story starts. And when Saurabh was doing all the hard work out there of writing that chapter, he interacted with a lot of ex-employees of Asian Paints who mentioned Champak Bhai's name. So that idea, that seed of an idea was there in Saurabh's head since the last 8 years. And it was just we were just quite lucky that Mr. Atul Choksey, who's the son of Champak Bhai, he agreed to do this biography. So then so that's the history. As far as what Saurabh and Rakshit and Marcellus have written about Asian Paints, that is most definitely already very comprehensive. I think Saurabh wanted a broader picture of the origin story and how Champak Bhai was among the four founders that started this company. As far as the process is concerned, there were just three quite simple steps. The interviews with the family and a few well wishers that formed a big chunk of the raw material, so to say, for the book. The second were old annual reports, and the third were meetings with ex-employees. So all of these three put together are all sources that are from outside of from these are external sources that were not in the public domain. So to meet them, analyze the balance sheets, meet the ex-employees, and bring in all that into one cohesive book was really the task. It took me 2 years, 2 years almost full time writing the book. And yeah, that was the process.
So again, one of the questions that remain unanswered was the when the person you're profiling is not there.
Okay, sorry, yeah. You have to depend on the memories. That's it. Memories from the family and memories from the ex-employees that I met. People who have actually interacted with him, met him, have known him, have stories, have anecdotes. That's it. That is how you, as you put it, lived in the shoes of Champaklal. To recreate him, the only way to do it is to recreate him from the memories and stories of other people.
Wow. And how easy it is, I mean, if how approachable are these people? Because I remember Sonu telling me that she just went to Kuldeep Singh Dhingra and said, I want to write a book on you, can I? And he said yes. Is it the same way that Atul Choksey also did? I mean, responded, or was it a little they were held back and
They took their time, and it was only through Saurabh that this happened. I'm pretty sure that if I walked into the office without any background, without any without any introduction or without anything at all, and just said that, hi, I want to write a book on you, Atul Choksey's security guard would not let me through. So Sonu is an accomplished veteran of a person. I'm
yeah.
sure that that anybody, any entrepreneur would be welcoming of her, and that makes a lot of difference. I'm much younger and I'm not as as established as her.
Because this is a question that comes a lot, when in from the audience when I'm talking to somebody and they say, "Ki, how approachable are these guys?" Of course, they look up to the people who've achieved in life, and then how approachable are they? Are they like us? In certain ways, do they embody the same principles that we do? So these kind of questions tend to come in.
Are they like us? I think the answer to that is a significant no, because if they were like us, then they would actually be like us. See, as far as the daily habits, emotions go, they are like us. They also wake up in the morning, they also go to work, and they also go to sleep. But that's where pretty much most of it ends. I think beyond that, that's what the Victory Project is about, right? So if you want to become something, if you really want to achieve your passion, then that's a very separate set of steps that you have to take in your life to become like those people, and hopefully when you become like them, then you will know the difference. But I will say one thing, that I think this generation has become probably much more approachable than anybody else. I'm pretty sure if you look at Nikhil Kamath, Nitin Kamath, or any of the startup founders, all of whom are probably worth in billions and billions and billions of dollars, these people, you just put them a tweet or a social media message, I think most of them respond to you. I don't think you need to knock on their door or do anything. I mean, you reach out to them. The fact that they are so active on social media, that shows that they are very much approachable. So that's it. Yeah,
So Varun's got a very interesting question in the meanwhile. I was going to take it later on, but I think, it's a good question. So how do you handle criticism or, differing opinions when, you've written a book, you've published a report. So of course, there are always. So how do you do that?
very grateful to social media for that. Is all I'll say. If you've been long enough on social media, I think this is a piece of cake. See, I mean, what is criticism? It's somebody's point of view. You have to learn from it. And social media is not very forgiving these days. I mean, they don't have, if they don't like something, then they just say it and that's it. I remember for the Wisest Owl, for example, if you can, the kind of comments that I had got at that point of time, it was okay. I mean, I really didn't take it seriously. Some people said that it's a sellout, it's nothing but interviews with advisors and there's nothing to it. And I realized that yeah, I mean that probably is how the book has come across to people, then fine. Maybe they went into it expecting that I will tell them how to double or triple the money, then sorry. I'm more than happy if you meet me, I'll refund the money to you. But that was never my purpose. But I get that, I get that. So I think the way to handle criticism is to learn from it and then have that much of wisdom that, believe me, comes only from experience to improve yourself in the next attempt on the in the next endeavor on the next thing that you do, because the criticism is from honest and well-meaning people. Some of them come in the form of insults, but I think all of us are grown up enough to know what to listen to, what to hear, and what to just completely and totally filter out. That's why I said social media helps. I mean, uh, if I had taken criticisms, if IVM, not me, if IVM had taken criticism seriously, then I don't think my podcast would be around so far. I'm just glad that they were generous enough to persevere through it for so long.
No, no, of course, yeah, right. Of course. And when you're on Twitter, I mean, now the social media. So social media is, let's say, 1x, but if you're on Twitter, your criticism are 3x. because and off lately people just come there to to challenge your peace and loving nature in life.
No,
So
I think that's okay, Jenna. You have to think of it this way that when you consume a service, you now have the opportunity to leave feedback.
right.
So when you go to a restaurant, you'll definitely leave a Google review or a Zomato review or a Swiggy review. Everybody does that.
Hmm.
And this is India, where people know that when they pay 100, they should get 1,000 rupees of satisfaction. That's why they say UX UI. Take an app, go to the iOS store, go to the Play Store, look at the reviews that apps get. So reviews are the way for any brand, author, company, service to figure out what the public is saying about you. Most of it is not good, but some of it is really good, and if it helps you improve, then I think that's a good thing.
That's very true. It's very true. So let's get out of that Twitter mania and social media. Uh, let's come to Champak Bhai. I think he's a character in its own way, right? So here's a guy who, I mean, is it like more like romanticizing the fact that he went from nothing to everything, or is it because sometimes when we talk about people of that era, when we talk about even Dhirubhai, we talk about, of course, the Birlas weren't that way, but a lot of these entrepreneurs in that time coming out of scarcity and actually making their mark, and most of them have certain traits. So, what was it with Champak Bhai at that point in time? If you take his early years in the business,
See, I think entrepreneurship then today, whichever era is entrepreneurship. I mean, the person who wants to do this, there will always be some things that are common to him, irrespective of which era he lived in. So that held true in Champak. By the time it holds true today also. You'll find the same recurring theme for a lot of these people. So one theme obviously is drive, passion, commitment, dedication. So that comes out from having a very tough childhood, which was the case with him. He saw his father getting financially bankrupt almost to the point where Champakbhai himself had to leave his studies. And that can either make you or break you. Thankfully, in his case, it made him. He kind of, at some level, he decided, and this is again a recurring theme I've heard when I've done the Victory Project, when I met a lot of entrepreneurs. I hear a lot of them say that I've seen poverty and I don't want to go back there. Okay, so that itself becomes it becomes a very big driving factor in their lives. Now you call it fear, you call it whatever, but I've seen it in their eyes. Like a few founders, I can't name them out here. I mean, they said that we weren't IIT, IIM at all. We didn't have any choice. We were just thrown in the deep end, and we saw what it is to be poor, and it just horrified us, it terrified us, and we wanted to ensure that we are not there. We didn't want our children to be there, and we didn't want any of our employees or anybody to ever be in that kind of situation. So I think for Champak Bhai also that was true. But the one difference comes that came in Champak Bhai's life, and I've said this in the book also, it comes in every entrepreneur's life is scale, which means that after you've achieved a certain something, what do you do? Right now, most family businesses would just chill out in life and say, okay, we are done. We are usually you would have like one region, one product, you become very good in it, you have a monopoly, and then you say, okay, now I become complacent. I don't want to take this outside this region. I don't want to explore new products, and I'm good and happy. And that's a good thing. If you look at the franchises in India that have been built, most of them are regional. Very few are national. But it is this regional to national jump that really takes everything. Now that in today's era has become very easy because you just open a laptop, start an app, start get funding, and you've already reached out to the entire country, right? For certain products, obviously not for old school products where you need a factory. But even there, you could make a platform app simply and connect a whole set of buyers and a whole set of sellers, and that's it. You're done. But that era, obviously, when technology was not there, capital was not as easily available as of now, people had to work harder. I think that's what Champak Bhai did. He just, like most entrepreneurs, he was willing to work at least 50 times harder when he was young, 100 times harder when he was middle aged, to take his company so far ahead that no competition could even catch up with him. So I think that's what differentiates someone who achieves that skill versus someone who's very happy being the certain, I wouldn't say comfort zone, but at being at a certain level of growth or level of scale.
and yet he achieves a very strong family bond. It's unheard of when it comes to smaller family businesses.
I don't know about that. When I did in the weekly project and I had met so many of these people, from Ramdev Agrawal to a lot of other people, the one thing that I realized, and again, if you read a lot of business books, you'll see that once a person becomes the leader, a CEO or chairman or whatever it is, at that point of time in his life and in his business, it doesn't really matter much about his technical skills or his IT or his IM or whatever. What matters is his personal equation with all the stakeholders around it. I've heard so many people say that, the CEO is nothing but a designation. All I'm doing the entire day is meetings. I like to think of myself as chief people's officer. That's it. So people who reach that level are usually people who are very good at building a consensus. And that usually speaks of someone who can handle a very wide and diverse set of people very easily, whether it is family, whether it is suppliers, whether it is customers, debtors, creditors. I think that people skill is something that at least worked and was very important at a certain level in a certain era in India. I don't know whether it's true or not, but I think that that's what makes Champak Bhai very different.
That is quite true. And bringing on the Dani family, the Choksey family, and the others, I think, and not just his own family, but even their uh, children and grandchildren, and bringing them on one page. I think that's incredible. Very
Yeah,
few people I have
I
heard
think
achieve it.
the first generation caught off really well, and that at least carried on to the second generation. And Champak Bhai was a very important factor of keeping all the families together, so that so that everybody's close and motivated enough to work within the same company.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you, there's one line in The Rise of Chemist, page number 61. Chari got, I think, from Madhukar, is that if you want to come up in life, you must not specialize in one field, but you should have a wide range of experiences. I think it goes with your concept of tea, which was
Yeah, he
widely
spoke about in
popularized
Victory
in
Project. Yeah, there
21.
was something in Victory Project about that. Yeah.
So I think let's expand a bit, in terms of when you're talking about one field versus a wide range of experiences.
I think if I keep it relevant to the book, then it's simply what all the senior employees have done. They've always been rotated between roles. So someone who comes in with a marketing degree from an IM starts off. Probably marketing is sent to some office and then he's given a whole lot of stuff to do. That was a recurring theme that happened with a lot of senior employees. KVS Anand, for example, became the plant head of a certain factory within Asian Paints. Now, he's an IIT and IIM, so obviously to some extent the IIT degree helped. But all of these people were rotated and rotated and rotated across, which is again a standard practice that a lot of large multinationals do. It just helps you to build your skills and hopefully find something that you're really good at and then stay in that. All the CEOs of your levers and your ITCs have all done pretty much everything that is there within the company. These are multi-product, multi-region companies that do that are so diverse that anybody who has been there for 10, 20, 30 years and then becomes a CEO, you can say, he's obviously accomplished a lot. So he starts off in one particular area, okay, which probably is related to his B school degree, does that, then the company gives him the opportunity to try out other areas. So a lot of it is driven by what the company and its leaders offer to their employees. Look at banks, right? PSU banks, everybody gets transferred every few years. So they go from region to region, role to role, and that's how seniority develops. So I think that diversity, the experience of diversity is in effect the whole T thing that you spoke about, the way of learning.
And if you can go, if you can also talk about tea, with regards to the Victory Project as well, I think because we've mentioned it here, it's very important for the audiences to know that
Yeah, so in the Victory project, our basic premise was specialization. And the fact that you have to choose one field and then become like really, really, really good at it and become a master of it. At the same time, having skills that are associated with it. Let's take an example. Okay, so equity research is what? You take a company, analyze it, write about it, and that's it. So some of the very obvious skills that are required are analytical skills. Okay, then comes writing skills. These two are the core. Now these two really form the main part of your expertise, of your skills. But along with that comes the people skills. Now, if you're sent to the factory of the company that you're analyzing and you're told to do a dealer survey, that's when you have to learn to pick up a lot of other things. Some of it could even be learning a new language. India is a huge country. And if you can, if say, if you're sent to the south to do a dealer survey of a large company, imagine the advantage you have if you learn one language and you go there and you speak to the dealers. The kind of information, the kind of insights that you will get is something that no spreadsheet will give you. Is something that nobody can ever give you. Now that is the side skills that develop along with the main skill. So that's why I said, for the skills that are associated with success, those are something that you have to develop and find on your own. It could just be your ability to go down to, say, a dealer's stockyard and just count the number of vehicles out there and get an idea of the inventory that he has. Obviously, that's not going to come to you from any Excel spreadsheet. The company is definitely not going to tell you that information. But you're someone who has an enterprise and that skill. That requires a lot of out of the box thinking. Okay, so that's the first thing. If you look at writing, now in writing also, writing requires a lot of skills, even if you're doing an analyst's job. For you to analyze a certain situation and put it across in like one page and get the client's attention, that is another skill that does not come easily. Some of it obviously comes with time, but a lot of it comes if you're open-minded enough and if you have other skills enough. Take reading a person. Now there are a lot of books on body language. If you just pick up and read those books and apply them in real life, that itself can give you an edge. So these are all skills that are there associated with your job, any job for that matter, that will always help and supplement you to get ahead at a competitive level other than better than others.
This is what you say, when you tell the youngsters, ki you need to learn alongside, you need to build the skills alongside. That it's not just your core skill, but a lot of the other communication skill, people skill, like body language reading skill. I think those sort of things really make a world of a difference. And of course, like you rightly said, if you know a particular language and you're going into that region and talking to them, they go bonkers on you. So I think that's quite interesting way. And so there's one thing that especially a lot of people tend to ask is this something that comes naturally or is this something that you develop? So what happens? I mean, how a
No,
lot of people think it comes naturally, like Virat hitting those sixes of Asadov, comes to Harris Raw comes very naturally to him.
no, there's nothing called natural. I mean, it's like that saying, right? Everybody's an overnight success after like 10 years of practice. So I don't believe in that at all. I mean, I think now there's at least an established body of accomplishments, results that show you that just having natural talent is not enough. Putting those 10,000 hours of practice and really doing the same thing over and over again with different results. Okay, now that's the difference between insanity and doing something differently. And we've written at length about this in the Victory Project. So I think nothing of that is natural. What probably is natural is a few factors like innate drive, motivation, dedication, discipline. That might be natural. Those are traits. Those are something that you're born with. But after that, everything is what you put into your job. And I think that we live in a very different world today than what used to be at one point of time, where just being in the right place in the right time could give you at least 50% advantage over others. I think that advantage is maybe not 50%, probably has come down. I'm not saying that everybody is given an equal advantage. Where you are born still makes a lot of difference, but with the right amount of effort and the right amount of hard work, a lot can be achieved.
Of course, you see the likes of, I mean, take Saurabh only, for example. He goes to London, comes back, and he does what he does best. I mean, just keep on redefining the industry. So I completely agree to that. Now, the thing that I want to touch upon is the first supercomputer, and something even Saurabh spoken a lot about. You've also given a lot of your writing when you're talking about Chapter 7, a mainframe at Bando. So.
It wasn't a supercomputer, so that's the first thing. And
Okay.
there's always a big difference between a supercomputer and a mainframe, right? Which is why the title of the chapter is mainframe.
Okay.
Supercomputers are very different things. So yeah, this was, again a very counterintuitive decision for a company to take. That also a family-owned business that has not had any experience of computers. It's just that there was a pattern that was established at that point of time. That wherever there was something new happening in India, Asian Paints wanted to be the first ones to participate in that. So let's say engineering schools opened up, they hired a chemist. IITs opened up, they got the idea of mainframes. IIMs opened up, they picked up MBAs from there. Later on, when the economy opened up and advertising came in, they were there in TV advertising. So all of that showed that these people were willing to take a lot of bets on things which were counterintuitive, and even if some of these ideas failed, for example, in case of IIMs, the first two people that they hired from IIM Ahmedabad, they left the company in 5 years. Now, usually a lot of businessmen, their response is that forget it, we don't want to hire from them because these people will just leave the job for the next possible opportunity that comes in. But these people didn't do that; they doubled down. Similarly, for the computer, I remember when I had met Veeragwan, the gold medalist from IIM Ahmedabad who was responsible for bringing the computer, suggesting it, coming, bringing it here, installing it. He told me that for the first few months of the first initial period, even nobody had any clue of what to do out there. And then it just happened that the Asian Paints was also going through a rough time, and that's when the employees stepped up and figured out ways of how to use the computer to predict demand better and to improve the logistics, and that made a very big difference on working capital at that point of time. Now, were they the first company in India to have a mainframe? Absolutely not. SO was there, which is the old Standard Oil. The Tatas, which were their neighbors, which would eventually become their neighbors, and in their office in Nariman Point, they were using computers. A few companies in the north, I think the DCM group, they were definitely using computers. Some of them had it in their own premise, like SO. Some of them did it on contracting basis, as in they wouldn't own the computer, they would outsource data processing to places which had computers. So the idea was new, and Asian Paints was certainly not the first company that bought a mainframe at that point of time. It was the first paints company, from whatever I'm told, that invested in a computer at that point of time. But buying a computer and putting it to use are two different things. And I think that they did both at the right time in the right way.
So when you talk about, very interesting when you talk about buying it and putting into use, is is that also one of the reasons, why Asian Paints could do it, but the competitors didn't copy?
The competitors copied. The competitors took their time, but they copied it. Veer Raghavan for some time after he left Asian Paints ended up with BG Korean, I think, and Berger. So it's not like the see everything that Asian Paints did was copied by the entire competition. Each and everything that they did. So it was not that they were that the competition could not do. The difference was that Asian Paints did it first. They put it to use. They achieved scale so fast that when the competitors also did the same thing, it was too late. So they would go from 1 to 100 doing all this. The competitors would go from 1 to 50. That 50 and 100 is the difference between doing what the leader does, but you're too small, and that by the time you achieve efficiencies of scale from the same idea, the competitor is already there. So that's the difference.
And then the market cap also reflects the same difference. So
I, I honestly, the market cap is just a very small part of the book, and the market cap is always a result,
yeah,
not a reason for their performance.
correct. Agreed. Absolutely. I think one thing I've found very interesting in the book is he doesn't want he wants his children to have their own separate businesses, grandchildren to have their own separate businesses. I'm talking about Champak Bhai. He's not really looking at the traditional Gaddi sort of a business. He's looking at basically corporatizing it, having professionals on board.
First of all, I think at the core of this is a very simple idea that every family business, every entrepreneur goes through. At what point do I take a step back and let other people manage my company? That's it. For a lot of family businesses, their strength is being able to get the best of talent within either their family or their community. Okay, rather than search for absolute and complete strangers. The Birlas have built in the early years when they started, the Birlas built an absolute monster of a business relying on the innate talent of the Marwadis. Okay, the same thing has repeated in all other areas of India, where within the community, within the family, You have so much of talent that you don't really need professionals. And these guys build the business generation after generation and generation after generation. But what do you do when you don't have that choice? What do you do when you have four friends and the maximum that you can do is maybe eight children? So you have two choices here. Like I said earlier, you choose to say, okay, we'll stay within one product, within one region, and that's all we will do. And we'll keep the business within the family. We'll keep the people who are working within the family, and we won't do anything else. The second choice that you have is to really become larger and larger. You will need to dilute. You will, because all your bandwidth will be choked up and you will not be able to grow. You will need other people to come there and take up roles, head of marketing, head of production, head of factories. All of these will have to be given to outside professionals if your family doesn't have the kind of time. And that I think is that one single decision that Champak Bhai took in the late 50s when he got Madhukar and Charlie. That's it. After that, everything was, everything changed.
And then, it's the D-Day when he decides I'm exiting the business. So
Yeah,
that's
that
likely, and not something a lot of people would want to do.
I think that, see, I'm pretty sure that these things look very bizarre and unexpected on the day that it happens. I'm pretty sure that there was a very, very, very long build up to this that culminated into this event, is what I would assume. I mean, all family businesses have their splits, and India has been a great example of that. I've spent some time talking about the third generation curse also. So it's not unusual what happened with the four families, and one person decided to exit. I think that, as I've written in the book, fact is that Champak Bhai was the only man remaining from the first generation. The other three were already passed away. And I think at some point of time, he knew that he had to make a certain decision. And that decision was that for the company to grow, it would have to take a very different direction. And maybe that was the bone of contention where the other families had a different point of view and Champak Bhai had a different point of view. And they reached a point where and this is the late 1990s, 1997, where 130 crore was a massive amount, was a huge amount. There's no way that Champak Bhai could have bought out the stakes of the other three families. The three wouldn't have sold, that's for sure. Even if they did, Champak Bhai would not have the kind of money. The same thing applied to the other families, that if they wanted to buy out Champak Bhai's stake, even the three of them, 130 divided by three, was still a huge number. There were no private equity players or venture capitalists to there to fund this thing. So that's why this was the only way out. Obviously, 25 years later, with hindsight, it seemed like a very logical decision. But when it happened, it was something that was it was bizarre. It was something that I think was unheard of. And it's only when these things happen that the next generations learn from their mistakes and do the right thing, which is have a succession plan, put up certain procedures to block any unexpected moves. You see it happening in the Ambanis also, right? I mean, they are the biggest family right now after the tussle that happened in the second generation, the third generation is having a much, much, much more peaceful transition. That's how you learn. That's the only way to learn. It usually happens in a way that you can't predict, but it also becomes a lesson for other families to learn and say that we don't want that happening with us. And those families that learn it, good for them. Those that don't, they'll pay the price eventually.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think with that, it makes Champak Bhai's story a lot more insightful. Somebody who rises from the ashes, reaches the peaks, and says, "This is it. I've done my bit, and I leave it to the next generation. To actually do it." So you've really brought out all these facets so well that the book. I think it just took me close to 2 days to because I couldn't keep the book down. It's not because
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
the writing is so fluid. You are living the life alongside it. At one point, you're even imagining Champak Bhai taking those decisions or getting angry for having those these consultants over because he doesn't like consultants. He says that how can a consultant understand an entrepreneur? And the consultant comes and says, sell it out, and he goes like fuming out. You can imagine, when the way you've written it. Yeah, I would
Thank
have
you.
like, literally banged the door at that point in time. कि बस अभी बहुत हो गया मेरे को किसी का नहीं सुनना. So I think we're just reaching towards the tad end of our 1 hour. It's been an
Sure.
amazing time. I didn't realize in our conversations how time flew. There are a few questions that have come in, and we'd like to take them. So these questions have less to do with Asian Paints, more to do with you as a writer. So uh, you know, there's one Aniket's asked a very interesting question, like, what advice would you give to aspiring authors who are hesitant to start their writing journey?
I don't like advice at all. But and since I've had this conversation with a lot of people, I think first you need to have a reason to write.
Correct.
If you don't, then I don't think you should, you should even look at doing that, because there are a lot of other things to do in life. So once you've found the reason to write, which is called the why, then it's simple really. Then you have to just commit to it. And we live in an era where you don't have to write a book. There are newsletters, there are Substacks, there is social media. You can flex your muscles out there. That's a great place to start from. Put your writing out there, let it be out there, let people see, get criticism, get used to that and use that to perfect your skills. And then once you're ready and you're convinced that you want to write a book, then I think by that point of time you will already have the motivation that you need. But honestly, first find the reason to write. Once you've answered why do I want to write, then everything else will follow very easily from that. And I think the one thing that's helped me, whether it is a podcast or whether it is a book, is just to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And that's the reason why the podcast also exists. Because when I started it, I didn't have any plan to change the world, or make 140 crore Indians into better. I didn't do all that. I was just clear that every Monday there should be something new for people to listen to. What they do after that is honestly their call. But each and every Monday, week after week, month after month, year after year, there has to be a new episode. And the day I feel that, that's it, I'm there, I'll just pull the plug on that. The
Perfect.
same thing actually goes with writing, that if you can consistently put something out there over and over and over again, and obviously learn from that, by the way, and keep on improving yourself, then you'll figure it out for sure.
I think it's wonderful how you've said consistently and doing it again and again and again. I think it's the churn that is missing in a lot of these people these days. I think they want to shift from one thing to another very quickly, but
I
the
guess that's part of being from a very old school of thought. I've always held this belief that the most mediocre product, if it is delivered 24 by 7 by 365 without any drop, without anything, but just doing it over and over again, will always be better than a brilliant and magnificent product that is delivered erratically. So you might have the best possible thing in the whole wide world, but if 1 month in a year it's down, or 1 day in a week it's not working, or anything, or anything that makes it inconsistent, I don't know whether I want to be there. I would rather be, a very small, tiny Udupi restaurant who's open 18 hours in a day, giving out the same idli sambar 365 days in a year, than probably be a fine dine where I'm not so sure about how things will happen. Maybe I use the first to go to the other.
absolutely we still want to go to let's say Ramasha or a Mysore cafe, back in
Yeah.
Matunga, get a fine dine. Still a little worried, whether that food
No,
will have the same quality or not.
you
I
can
think
do both. I'm not saying it has to be one or the other, but if you can succeed at doing that one thing consistently and over again, then chances are that when you do something bigger, then that also will have the same traits of that come from your learnings. That's what I'm trying to say.
so. There's a very interesting thing on Victory Project. So one of the things that you just talked about. So Jenny has asked a very interesting question, and it's the same. Some part of it is the same. Is that in Victory Project you discuss achieving peak potential. So of course, peak potential is the churn that we're talking about. And that's what she's asking is how do you personally define success and peak potential, and how do you incorporate these concepts into your work?
Oh, I mean, all three are big questions, right? They would take their own thing. The first is how do you define success? I don't know, honestly. The conventional measure is net worth. The conventional measure is valuation. The conventional measure could be, I don't know, but thankfully these days now people are questioning that. Is success being able to have a very good night's sleep and being in the best of your health? I think that's a great goal to have. I think that's a fantastic goal to have. Is success measured by having both, by being very healthy, very wealthy, and doing what you like to do? So I think that you need to define your own success. Now, I would love for Asian Paints for the book to be a bestseller. For me, that would be success. Uh, but if someone gave me the option of buying 100 shares of Asian Paints in the year 1980 for the IPO, I would say yes, that's also success. I don't have to write any book. I don't have to appear on any podcast. I don't have to do anything. My net worth is enough to take care of my child. Is that success? I would say, of course, that's success. Is success the satisfaction of having written this book at this juncture? I feel yes. So I think success is a very personal measure. We like to think that money is the one standard benchmark of success on this planet. That the one who's richer is the one who's more successful. Okay, so which might be true. I'm not anyone to pass a value judgment on that. But usually being richer is better than being poorer. I think that in general is a good way to look at things in life, because that will help you, believe me. So that's out of the way. Okay. So success, I think you need to define it as to what really success means to you. Now, peak potential, see, peak potential as defined in the book as something that we believe, both Saurabh and me, after having met the people that we do, is doing something that you love to do and making the world recognize that and extracting something out of it. Now, a musician can be very good at what he does, but if he's going to be singing at a rail station begging, that's not really where he wants to be. Okay, so peak potential is about improving and going on. First, finding what you really love. That itself, honestly, I think almost 70-80% of us fail at that. Okay, and it's very difficult. If I ask you, tell me something that you love, you tell me I love to travel. Okay, now, but what will you do out of travel? Then I would say, okay, then you should look at becoming a travel blogger. Now, that is again a separate set of skills. But then if you become the best travel blogger on the planet, then that obviously will put you competitively in a better position than anybody else. Becoming the best travel blogger on the planet will require you to make sacrifices, will require you to have discipline of a very different order. It will require you to learn skills of video editing, video shooting, writing, presenting yourself. And nobody's saying that's not possible. All of that is possible. So I think peak potential will mean different things to different people, but it means that you need to do what you love, become very good at what you do, and if possible, become at least in the top 1% of people doing that. Only then can you define that as peak potential. So it stays at potential. I mean, even I have the potential to become a Nobel Prize winning author. Okay. Do I want to do that? Of course, I want to do that. But where I am right now in life, you have to also be a little bit realistic. But obviously, someone half my age can look at the same goals in a very different way. So I think peak potential and success link to each other with two very different concepts.
It's really beautiful. I think, this should have been the opening question, because you've literally, even changed my thought process when it comes to peak potential and success. So brilliant, brilliant. Of course. So we're coming to the last question. So Sakshi here is also echoing my thoughts right now. So what's next on your writing journey, and how are you going to
Oh,
do your next topic?
I'm already writing a smaller book based on the learnings of my podcast. So I'm working on that. That thankfully is not such a it won't be a 2 year endeavor. I hope to get that out of the way soon. I'm working on the memoirs of another CEO of not another but of a CEO who was instrumental in turning around the company in the late 1990s. So he's writing his memoirs, and I'm kind of really looking forward to that because to me, corporate history is really my biggest passion right now. And if I can play a role in bringing a lot of these stories to the wider public, then that's what I'm doing right now.
I'm very sure, you're going to win a Nobel very soon. These are
Oh,
my wishes for you because your writing is
thank
fluid.
you for the wishes, but one also needs to be a bit realistic in life. Also, thank you.
I think you need to be a little crazy also. If you look at Champaklal, he was not he was more optimistic and crazy rather than being realistic. So We would want to be that for you. And
Thank you.
really
Thank you.
looking forward to the next set of your books, next set of your work. And, I never got this chance, Anupam, but today I really want to thank you for, uh, you know, actually making the transition from a CA and becoming a research analyst to this writer that you are today and following your heart. I think in some ways, even I'm on that journey, and it really gives me a lot of confidence that yes, this is possible. May not do as great a work that you've done, but even 50% is good enough for me, and
I don't I don't think you should sell yourself short, Geneva. I mean, firstly, of course, thank you for your really kind words. Believe me, I wouldn't look upon it as a transition or as a journey. There's sometimes you just have to do what you have to do,
yeah,
and it's only later on that you figure out whether those decisions were right or wrong. So I leave that, let's keep the jury inside and let them debate a little bit more about what I did. As far as you're concerned, honestly, I think the world is the place where you should play. And I really wish you and every viewer, everybody out here that gave their time, believe me, for anyone to give 1 hour of their time for something like this, it speaks a lot about their generosity. So thank you so much to all of them. Thank you to you. I wish you guys and your audience all the very best.
thank you so much, Anupam. And with that, let's call it a wrap today. Thank you so much.